pleasure to introduce Lynette Rogers. She is the owner of Virtually Yours and the founder of Saving Our Youth. She is also the author of the #1 best-selling book, Mission Unstoppable, with Les Brown and George Frazier. Good morning, Lynette.
Woo! Well, good morning, Michelle. Happy Monday. Good morning to all the Momentum Monday movers and shakers. Again, my name is Lynette Rogers, the co-host of this call that is designed to wake you up, shake you up, and take you up to new levels in your life, your career, business, and your dreams. Momentum propels you forward in life. Without it, success is difficult. So who is this Monday broadcast for? It's for everybody. If you're a stay-at-home parent, a 9-to-5er, a career professional, an entrepreneur in a traditional business or in a direct sales business, if you're a student or if you're in between jobs or reinventing yourself, expecting your blessing, if you're a man or a woman, this broadcast was designed with you in mind. And I'm pumped up, excited, on fire, ready to introduce my amazing co-host. First up, Bishop Dickie Robbins. He is the pastor of Life in Christ Cathedral of Faith. He is the visionary behind Dickie L. Robbins Ministries, chiming in from Chester, Pennsylvania. Good morning, Bishop.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm excited about the direction God has us going in today.
All right, and you know we are definitely in the right direction, being ordered by his steps. Good morning. And next up, we have the founder of Fort Wayne Girls Rock and Girls Rock Summer Camps. She's chiming in from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Good morning, Danita Washington.
Good morning, everybody, and I just feel the favor upon us today. Good morning.
All right. And next, you heard her fired up as usual, welcoming each and every one of you to the call. Michelle Washington, all the way from Newark, Delaware. She is the founder of Michelle Marie Fashion Agency and the visionary of Women of More campaign. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Lynette. Let's go. Woo!
I love it. Always ready, on fire. Well, good morning. The team and I, we are excited, holding down the fort as Jill. She is traveling this morning, but we are definitely going to show out and rock the call this morning. We will be right here every Monday morning to make sure that your Mondays will never be the same. Please take a second right now and join our Momentum Monday Facebook group and join the discussion by making your comments or asking questions, like a quote or something you hear, hashtag Momentum Mondays and hashtag I am on the call. Well, guys, I am pumped up. It's Monday, and you know we have been discussing The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. Last week, we talked about how the slight edge affects our relationships, and our relationships are both built up and torn down in the subtlest ways, and most people are unaware that the slight edge is working either for them or against them in every relationship. I'm pumped up. This week, we're talking about Chapter 13, and it's simply about where do we go from here, right? It simply painted a clear picture of the mindset and the difference between successful people and what they do versus what unsuccessful people do. Now, we have 32 days left in 2015, and it's time for us to get laser focused. We have to finish this year out strong, and we still have time. See, successful people do what unsuccessful people are not willing to do. They put the slight edge to work for them rather than against them every single day. They refuse to let themselves be swayed by their feelings, their moods, and their attitudes. And it's really funny because we're going to start off the conversation talking about that 8th day of the week. Yeah, you know, the one that never comes. The one that when people ask you, when are you going to get started on that business plan, that book? And the response is someday. Someday is not here. It doesn't exist. I want to toss this over to Bishop. Bishop, what is up with the someday mentality, and what is that all about?
Well, that someday mentality has a lot to do with people not being willing to lock down specifics, a deadline. And if we have a goal that we're serious about, one of the ways we demonstrate that we're serious is that we give ourselves a deadline and a timeline. The deadline says the entire thing needs to be done by this specific date. The timeline talks about when certain aspects of that goal will be achieved in order for the entire goal to be achieved by the deadline. So it's called a deadline for a reason. If it's not done by a certain time, then that particular goal, that particular dream just might be dead.
Wow. So you're saying we have to put a deadline to our goals, to our dreams. And, you know, I find it interesting because I was stuck in the someday mentality a few years ago, and I found that the someday mentality keeps you safe. It really doesn't allow for you to really put action behind the words or the goals. And I want to bring Danita in on the conversation because you were talking about just your experience as a child. If you could share that story with our listeners about how you experienced or the someday mentality when you were growing up.
Well, one of the things, Lynette, that I shared last night on the call was that, you know, my mom and parents always promised a Disney World trip. And it was always the someday we would do it. And, you know, the someday didn't come. And so one of the things that I really want us to understand as callers, as parents, as mentors, as leaders with young people, we create legacy, we avoid creating legacy when we don't teach our young people to get away from the someday mentality. And so one of the things I did, it took someone to come into my circle and say to me about Christmas and say to me that, you know, they saw me at work putting the list together for my kids. It was probably up to $2,000, Lynette, easily. And she said to me, 2 E's, why don't you give your kids a new experience and exposure instead of giving them things that they're going to tear up and will be gone? And that spoke to me because I think I had picked it up. That was my trait from my parents. We had amazing holidays and Christmas money was spent, but we lacked some time gaining experience and exposure. And that someday could have happened, I think, with my parents had they created, like Bishop said, a plan. So for me, you know, I took on the P's. I prioritized, you know, what's important to me for my family, for my kids. If it is, your biggest investment will be shown in your checkbook. You know, plan. Like Bishop said, I set a plan for my family. So after that, every year we sat down before Christmas and we said, what's the experience we want this year? If it was an NFL game, if it was, you know, Disney World, Brazil we went to, we planned that. And so we got purpose. That's my other P. You know, I was serious about giving my kids experiences outside of the four walls of Fort Wayne. And then we pursued happiness and joy, mind, body, and spirit. And so when I did all those things, the 2 E's were easy. The experience and exposure came. And now as young men, they do the same thing for their families. And so I think, you know, it's just important, Lynette, that we understand that, like Bishop said, you must create a plan, you must prioritize and execute the plan if you're really, really going to get rid of the someday mentality. And what happened is not just I picked it up or got rid of it, but then it became legacy for my mom and my siblings.
Wow, I love that. Thanks, Danita. And, you know, it's interesting because at the end of the day, we need to know how to eliminate that mentality because, again, someday does not exist. It's now. If you're planning on a trip or if that's something that's on your to-do list, if you're planning to lose weight, go to the gym, whatever your goals are, write a book, start your business. Whatever that is, it can't happen someday. It has to happen today. And the way to eliminate that as Bishop and Danita just shared, you have to prioritize. You have to figure out, okay, and really be authentic and honest with yourself. Is this something that I'm going to do, and I'm willing to do what it takes to get it done? Plan. You have to plan for it, and then put actions behind the steps. I know when I was planning my first cruise, I had to put a down payment down, and that is what made it real for me. When I put my money where my mouth was, when I showed up and said, okay, here's the first payment, and then the next payment, and someday actually came. So we have to put action behind our words. I'm going to bring Michelle in on this conversation. Michelle, what's up with this someday mentality?
And it's so purposeful that in our planning that, like you just said, that it's realistic for where we are. And I said this last week, sometimes Jill and Danita and Bishop and yourself, y'all make this thing look so easy. And I know behind the scenes you have a plan of action. Sometimes we look at the finished product of a person or aiming for that thing, not realizing that the process is the key thing to get us where we're trying to go. And if we have the plan, we have the action, and we're being honest, like you said, to ourselves, we have to start where we are, not where we're going to be, but we need to start where we are, get that Play-Doh, and begin molding ourselves of where we are today so we can have a consistent growth pattern to where we're going. But we have to start. I experienced this, and I told y'all last night, and I'm really kicking myself in the behind with this. I really need to get some things out of my garage, and I've been putting it off. The prime time to do that was in the summertime. Now the weather is changing. It's raining, it's cold, so in all of that, it could have been done back then in the right season of my life, but I just said, I'll get to it. I'll do it. And now I'm forced to do it. Now, because I'm forced to do it, it's harder to do it because I didn't do it at the right time. So it's important to change the someday to today.
I love it. That's right. Change the someday to today. See, the someday mentality will definitely choke out and kill your dreams and your goals. So that's a hashtag moment. I would say everybody go on the Facebook page and hashtag I'm choking out the someday mentality. And if you're just joining us, we are talking about The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and we are discussing how to eliminate the someday mentality. We are going over the mindset that successful people have versus what unsuccessful people have and what they do. And while I'm transitioning our point, I ran across a quote that ties into another point that was made in the book. And the quote was by Theodore Roosevelt. And he said, if you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your trouble, you wouldn't be able to sit for a month. And I thought about that when I read in the book, successful people never blame circumstances or other people. Instead, they take full responsibility for their lives. And I had to pause on that because I said, my goodness, I remember being stuck, not understanding what that meant about taking full responsibility, because things happen that are outside of your control. But what that means is I'm responsible for how I respond to it. Bishop, talk to us about the importance of taking full responsibility for everything that happens in our lives.
Lynette, it really is the difference between home ownership and renting an apartment. In an apartment, ultimately that you're not responsible for everything. You have some responsibility as a tenant, but ultimately the responsibility for that apartment is the landlord's. But in a home, anything that goes wrong in that home, you can wait for the landlord all you want to, but the landlord is that person that stares you back in the mirror. You are the one who has to get the plumber now. You're the one who has to get the electrician. You're the one that has to be responsible for making sure that the value of your home does not diminish because of neglect. And so too many people are renting their lives rather than taking ownership for their destiny. And as long as we see ourselves as renting the vision that God has for our lives, we are less likely to accomplish and fulfill that vision.
Wow. Okay. We're going to pause on that for a second. I want everybody to really understand this. He said it's a matter of either home ownership versus renting. And what are you doing in your life? Are you owning your life or are you renting it? Isn't that powerful, Danita?
That is extremely powerful because the bottom line is, the power of choices. We must learn to live past comfort. And I'm renting an apartment right now and having a beautiful home built. But I'm telling you, Bishop, you're not telling a lie because I love the fact that they come change the light bulbs. Anything goes wrong, I can call them. When I'm back in my home, it's on me. And so it's crazy, almost wanted to stay down here in this apartment, even though I have, like you said, the ownership of the home. And so, we have to live past comfort so that we can truly experience a courageous life. So I totally agree. And that methodology is understandable.
Wow. Michelle, I every time Bishop, he cracks these atoms with his amazing analogies. And when you really think about it, it's cool to start off, renting because it gives you experience. But eventually you have to, and the goal should be to own your own home. And I wanted to bring you back in, Michelle, because when you really think about the overall picture of our lives, a lot of people want to take that easy way out, right? Because, again, like the Slight Edge mentions, it's easy to do, but it's also easy not to do all the things that we're talking about. So I want to bring you back in to just, how do you feel about Bishop's point about home ownership versus renting, especially when it comes to our lives?
It's a key point, and I know Bishop is going deeper in not just the physical aspect of renting and home ownership, because we could take that to the way that we rule and run our lives. And I think that so often, we as adults, sometimes we are paralyzed because we use, and not an excuse because I don't want to sound insensitive, but sometimes we use the way we were brought up for the reason of where we are today. And I could say, with my personal life, I have allowed some of my past to rent space in my life that has paralyzed me or stagnated me into not doing anything. But there was a day that I had to take ownership of my emotions and my mental capacity and no longer use my past, my hurt, my disappointment to rule and reign in my life today. Because once you know, you must do. There's no more excuses. I could go on, and I'm sure there's callers on the line that can say, throughout their life, they were hurt in relationships, their parents, abuse, divorce. I'm a divorcee, and all those things I could use for my reasons and my whys. But why? I don't want to use them. I no longer use those things to rent space in my life because I got comfortable in that mess. Some of those things are mess or messy. I choose ownership. I choose ownership over my mental state, my emotional state of mind, and definitely my spiritual walk. So it's important for us to go deeper and stop using the hurt, the pain to gain or to set precedents in our lives and begin to seek healing so we can move forward and pursue that promised land like Bishop always says.
I
and
love
Michelle,
that.
Lynette, can I just piggyback off of what Michelle just said?
Absolutely.
The excuses, the pain of our past is really fuel, and like gasoline. And every one of us knows that depending on the type of vehicle you have, gasoline becomes important in fueling that car for the journey or the destination that you're about to take. But an arsonist also uses gasoline as an accelerant to burn down stuff that they don't value or what they're angry against. So the bottom line is the pain of our past can either fuel our destiny, fuel our trip rather toward our destiny, or can burn down our goals and dreams and ensure that we never become anything more than what we used to be. So everybody has a past, and there's always some pain in our past. But turn our pain into power, the fuel that propels us toward our destiny. Otherwise, it's going to spill out over our future and burn down any chance we have for our hopes and dreams to become realized.
Bishop.
Wow. Wow.
Hashtag turn our pain into power. Please go to our Facebook page. I don't mean to move forward with that, Lynette, but that's huge.
No, that is huge. And you're right. It's amazing because when I think about that point that you just made, Bishop, when we take personal responsibility for our lives, when you really look at it, it's really quite liberating when you think about it because, you have total control over your life. And when I think about the responsibility that I have over my life, see, that responsibility cannot be split with anyone. When I was a child or when you're in your younger age, your parents are responsible for caring for you. But when you become an adult, you can't split that responsibility, and so when things get rough or when things show up in your life that didn't go according to plan, a divorce happens, a breakup happens, whatever happens, you are fully responsible, and there is liberation in that because of how you respond to whatever the events are or the circumstances that take place in your life. I'm just always reflecting on all the things that I planned and how it just didn't go the way I thought it should go. But my mindset allowed me at that time to either get stuck until I realized that, nope, I have the power to change this. As we approach the 8 o'clock hour, I just wanted to see if, Danita, if you had some final words before we shift into our after call, because we'll definitely be discussing this a little more in depth in our after call. But I want to toss it back to Danita for some final words before we shift into the after call.
Lynette, I'm just listening and I'm just getting full because part of the problem is that we have to learn to rise from things that are beyond our control. And in order to do that, usually we have to operate in forgiveness, and forgiveness really doesn't happen unless you allow something to die. See, we grieve the idea of what we thought wasn't supposed to be but we're afraid to create a new normal. That's usually from divorce, betrayal, a loss. And so, be willing to allow some things to die so that forgiveness can truly happen. I know for me and my experience with divorce, I was married to the thought of what it was, what I thought it should have been. And it took me 6 years to unfold, what God really had planned, and so be willing to allow something to die so that you can really get, to God's plan and his destiny in your life.
I love that. You're right. And forgiveness is the key to unlock that. And I really think that's powerful. Bishop, do you want to share a few words before we transition into the after call?
Yeah, yes. Just one final thought is I talked about the contrast, the difference between renting and owning. And, of course, sometimes we have to start out renting, but there is a concept called renting to own. Renting means that's my current situation. Owning is my ultimate goal. And the bridge between that is up front, realizing that I won't rent always, because if I'm always a renter, I'll never build any equity in my own life, my own dreams, my own goal. So my encouragement to everybody is, if you have to rent, rent to own.
Wow, I love that. If you have to rent, rent to own, and that's just the bottom line. I am super excited. It's 7:55. We are right up against the 8 o'clock hour. And before we transition into the after call, we were discussing on our pre-call how over the last few months we've had an amazing series. We started this call, the Momentum Monday series discussions, back in July. And we've had some amazing guest speakers. We've discussed some great books. We've discussed the winners versus whiners, the power of focus. We've dissected this book, The Slight Edge, and we want to put a challenge out to our listeners. Now, this is every time we have our call. Yes, we do our after call, and you guys get to chime in, and we'll be doing that this morning as well. But we want to put a challenge out to our listeners to actually get on the call with us next week. If you are one of our listeners who have been able to implement any of the principles, especially the principles in The Slight Edge, and have been able to get laser focused and implement any of the principles that we've discussed, we want you to come on with us and share your testimony. And if that is you, and you can definitely just share with our audience the things that you've gone through, that you can testify as it relates to what we're saying, go to our Facebook page, and we're going to select from all the individuals who are interested in getting on the call with us next week, because we want people to understand that none of us are special. These are the steps that you have to take in order to heal, in order to rise, in order to get to that other side. So I'm super excited, definitely looking forward to really just sharing your experience with the rest of the listening audience. We are right at that 8 o'clock hour. We're going to transition into our after call. So we definitely understand those of you who have to get off of the phone with us right now, but we're definitely going to transition into the after call. I'm going to set it up where you can unmute yourself. All you have to do is press *6 to unmute your line, and give us some feedback on the call this morning, or any of the principles that you've gained from over the last few weeks. I'm going to set the call up so you guys can chime in. All right. So if you are interested at this point in joining us in the after call, this is where you get to chime in with us. What are your thoughts on that someday mentality? Is anyone out there stuck in that someday mentality? I want to toss it back to you, Bishop, and just build on that part where you were talking about the renter mentality. Why do you think, though, that so many people are stuck in that phase?
Well, I believe that the primary reason is fear, sometimes fear of the unknown, or sometimes the fear is based on what people have told us all of our lives about what we can or cannot do. But the bottom line is, when we think about the whole idea, and I like to use analogies because people can see a picture of what needs to happen. There are people who never believe that they can own a home, so they'll live either in public housing or in somebody else's rented property for 20 years, and all they're doing is sending somebody else's kids to college while they struggle to make ends meet on their own. But if they're bold enough to take that leap and say, I'm going to discipline myself to save, and I'm going to discipline myself to repair my credit so that I can ultimately purchase a home of my own, yes, it's going to mean some sacrifice, and it's going to mean learning how to care for the property that I actually purchased. But people can do that. So there are two options here. You can stay stuck, or you can get started. You can't do both.
Okay, I'm going to mute the line 1 second. because there was a little background noise. So if you definitely want to chime in, press *6 to unmute your line. And I'm not sure if you guys heard that last part, but you can either get started or stay stuck. And I know that just in my experience, it's just a matter of a lot of times of, like you said, fear, Bishop, and not knowing or, you know, being stuck in a cycle, because sometimes that's all you know based off of your upbringing, right? So this is some powerful information. I definitely, Michelle, what are your thoughts on Bishop's last point?
Lynette, it was actually difficult to hear what Bishop was saying, but if possible, can we move back to what Bishop was talking about with turning our pain into power? I think sometimes we don't even know how strong we are if we don't pursue even harder while we're under pressure. I get a witness to that. I didn't know the strength that I had in my times of weakness if I didn't pursue, if I didn't have that mindset to go forward. It's almost like being hit and having a blow, and it drops you to your knees, and then within yourself, you know you want to get back up. And I have actually done that, where it may have dropped me to my knees, which is a great position, but a different topic, but I was able to rise up in that situation and conquer and pursue what I needed to pursue to get out of that. So I think that is huge in itself, because I could have given up while I was on my knees or when I was hurt. But in the midst of that, not always, because I'm not a superhero, but sometimes I was a superhero in that moment, and I allowed the power of God that was in me to lift me up in that situation and pursue all. So sometimes in the midst of the hurt, in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the fire, we have to know without a shadow of a doubt that we're going to get up and pursue all and recover all.
You know, Michelle, and it's so amazing because, you know, that pain is real. A lot of times, no matter what the challenge is, you know, pain is real. And you really have to go within, you know. And like you said, you never know how strong you really are until you have to be strong. And I reflect on just the different experiences that, you know, I can say, oh, I don't know how I would be able to handle certain things. I'm always, you know, watching Danita, and I know, Danita, you experienced your fire. And I just think about the shift that takes place when something like that happens, you know, and how do you pick up the pieces? How do you go on starting over and just getting past that, right? Knowing that God is going to take you to another place, right? Danita, I just, you know, always think about your situation. And I remember like it was yesterday, right in the midst of you doing that, you came to Detroit and spoke at my conference. You were pushing past that pain. And it's just amazing. And I wanted to bring you back in on the conversation because a lot of people, you know, like Michelle said, you fall and that's it. It's like, you know, how do you get the strength to keep going?
Well, you know, I have a quote that I saw this morning, and it said, the world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. And I say that because part of what we do a lot of talking, but your walk is what empowers others. And what I learned through my fire is that the best diamonds are built under pressure. They withstand the most pressure. I say this all the time on the call. And greatness is birthed through pain. I look at the childbirthing experience. As women, we go through that and we swear we will never do that again. The pain is too much. But the greatness that comes from it, that miracle that is birthed, then we go right back to it. And so part of what I'm learning is that, you know, like Bishop said, there is power in pain. There is purpose birthed through pain, but we have to be willing to stand up and start being courageous, you know. And I just believe in the power of choices. And when Bishop was talking about the homeowner to renter, I think a lot of it is fear, but I think a lot of it, too, is we must give experience and exposure and example to people who don't have those experiences. If all I know is Rennie, then I have to be able to see it differently in order to be different. And so I know what pushed me past my growing up. And my mother was an amazing woman, but I think there was just limitations as to where I grew up here in Fort Wayne. But once I encountered people who showed me different experiences, and loved me past it, I was willing and able to grow. And so, that's my point. Diamonds are built under the most pressure, the purest diamonds are.
I love that. I love that. Folks, again, this is the opportunity. If you are out there and want to chime in on the after call, just press *6 on your line and it will be unmuted. You can definitely chime in on the conversation. And I also want to remind you guys, if you're interested in joining us on the call next Monday, go ahead and post in our Facebook group page expressing your interest. Again, this is a challenge to anyone that's out there that's actually been able to apply the principles that we've discussed over the last few months, because I know that even when we did our 30-day challenge, that those are times that we all had goals that we were aggressively pushing towards, but we still have work to do. Again, this is our after call. This is about the listeners. Hit *6 if you want to chime in. Other than that, we will wrap up the call. I'm really just thankful for my co-host on the call this morning, because all this that we talk about, these are things that we are living, that we're talking from a space where, it's real. It's real. And it's not easy. Each day, as a slight edge, the book, as we're discussing in the book, it's a choice. Everything is a choice. How you function today, the choices you make is going to have an effect. And so I'm so conscious of the choices I make and how I direct my energy and my time. So because I realize so crystal clear now that I'm fully responsible for the outcomes in my life. And so with this last push to the new year, I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited because we're going to do some great things. So any final words from any of the co-hosts before we wrap up the call?
I would love it for if Bishop, are you still on the line? Okay. I think
I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm sorry.
Bishop,
I had muted up.
That's fine. Bishop, I would love for you to send us out, because I think it started with your comment in reference to the pressure and the fire. If you could finish that up.
Okay. Well, first of all, you guys were amazing this morning, and I just want to it's an honor to co-host this call with you all. Let me just say to all those who are still on the call, the listeners, that everybody on this call has gone through storms. You've gone through pain and opposition. You've probably been told more times than you care to remember that you can't achieve what you believe in your heart that you should achieve. But the bottom line is that God has placed something great inside of all of us. Sometimes the only person who gets in our way are we ourselves. And we do that sometimes because we are unwilling to exercise the faith that God has given us to pursue the passion and the purpose that he set for our lives. We can't stay stuck. I can remember my car getting stuck in the snow, and I had my family in the car. Because I had a precious cargo, something that was really, really important to me, I was motivated to get out of that car and push. Now, I don't know where the strength came from, but I did not realize that strength while I was still sitting in the driver's seat. But once I got out of the car, out of my comfort place, out of the warm place, and got behind that car and pushed, I realized that the car became unstuck. So if you're stuck as you pursue your dreams or your destiny, get out of the driver's seat. Let God sit there. You get behind the vehicle and simply push. Let's pray until something happens. push.
Wow. Well, I'm going to unmute the call. We're going to end it on that note, and I would just love to hear everyone say, I am pushing past the pain.
I am pushing past the pain. I am pushing past the pain.
Push!
I am pushing past the pain. Have a great Monday, everyone.
Push!
You too.
Push!
my people all across.